Merry Christmas. How we doing? Hey, it is so good to be with you. If we've not met, my name is Forrest. I'm on the team here at Neighborhood Church, and I'm just so grateful that you would carve out an hour of your time, an hour of your Christmas time to spend with us. It just means a bunch. And hey, if you're a guest with us, this is like your first time at Neighborhood Church, special welcome to you. And I actually have an opportunity for you if you're interested right after this service. In our lobby, just to my right, is something we call the Next Lounge, and we have a Christmas gift for you. Now, the line tends to get kind of long in there, so we've developed sort of a fast pass system, especially for those of you that I don't want to interact with people, but give me my free thing. There's a QR code in the seat back in front of you on a little card. You can scan that, just sort of follow the steps there, and you can walk in and not have minimal interaction. But for those of you that are like, I love lines and all, then you're welcome to it. So, hey, I don't know if you noticed, but on the screen just behind me before the service, I had a question up there. And the question was, hey, if you only had one word, how would you answer the question, what is Christmas about? In one word, what is Christmas about? And many of you kind of scan the code, and so I have your answers here. And you put things like family and food and hope and joy and smiles. Someone put tacos, which is, that's amazing. Invite me over, please. One of you even put Jesus. Well done on that. That's great. I love how one of you put Jesus. Everyone else, nah. That's amazing. Great answers. It's actually been something I've been thinking about for a few weeks now. How would I answer the question? How would I answer the question in one word, what is Christmas about? And I thought about it, and I wrote down lots of answers, and I finally came upon an answer that I just thought, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the one. And I actually brought a little object lesson because I really want this to get in your heads this year. So my answer to the question in one word, what is Christmas about, is bread. Is bread. Now, don't worry, we'll get there. I'll explain why I think it's bread, but this bread is actually Jewish challah bread that actually one of our staff member spouses made this morning. I'm gonna give that away a little bit later. But I actually made the connection that Christmas is all about bread, actually from an Anglican priest. His name's A.J. Sherrill, and I've heard him speak a few times, and I recently picked up his book, Rediscovering Christmas, and he kind of took everything I already knew and he just started making a bunch of connections for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, light bulbs going off. I don't know if you've ever had those kind of moments. And so I've just been so grateful for A.J. Sherrill. And I just thought his thoughts were so profound and fun that I thought, I kind of want to share that with Neighborhood Church on Christmas Eve. And so that's what I want to do. And I want to talk to you about Christmas and bread and why when people ask you, what's the real meaning of Christmas, you should answer bread. Next time, you should answer bread. And I'm gonna tell you why you should answer bread. And it's more than because bread's awesome and everybody loves bread. But I think what I really discovered was, and I gotta be honest, I was skeptical at first, is Christmas really all about bread? But if you really go back and start to listen to what the biographers of the life of Jesus, what they wrote down, what you discover is at the center of the Christmas story really is bread. And I think that's appropriate because bread is amazing. And bread is a huge part of my family's Christmas tradition. I think since Katie and I have been married, which is 22 years and probably even pre-marriage, so call it 24 years, every Christmas morning we've had the same breakfast. And it's rooted in bread, and it's monkey bread. You're familiar with this? You're familiar with monkey bread? For those of you that are not familiar with monkey bread, your lives are shallow and missing something amazing. And there's no nutritional value. It's dough and butter and cinnamon and sugar. Again, there's no upside to eating this other than it tastes amazing. In fact, I love bread so much, I wanted to gift bread for Christmas to one lucky person in the room. And so what I did is we partnered with a local bread company here in town, Bread Savage. And we know Bread Savage? Anyone a huge Bread Savage fan? They're amazing. And there's a $20 gift card under one of your seats. So go ahead, take a look, and hold it up high when you find it if you're that lucky person. if you're the lucky winner, so we know. Last service, people just started ripping the bottoms of the chairs off. Please don't be that intense about it. Anyway, it's just taped under there. Oh, we have a winner. We have a winner over here. Yes, congratulations in the back. Now, I do want to apologize for those of you with gluten sensitivities. This message may be offensive. But here's how I'm going to make the connection between bread and Christmas. I want to use 3 words. 3 words that you all know. If you're a church person or not a church person, a Bible person or not a Bible person, you know these 3 words. And here they are. It's Jesus, Bethlehem, and manger. Jesus, Bethlehem, and manger. And these words, very obvious sort of Christmas vocabulary, right? But what you may not realize is how deeply connected they are to bread. So let's just go. I'm just going to move through these words sort of one at a time. And the first word, of course, is Jesus. And yes, of course, we're going to talk about Jesus at a Christmas gathering for sure, but especially at Neighborhood Church. If you're new to Neighborhood, we call ourselves a Jesus church. Jesus is always our lead story around here. We think he's unmatched in both history and eternity. He's the model for what it means to sort of flourish as a human being. But Jesus is also deeply connected to bread. If you just read about his life, if you just read the biographies we have that have survived history, bread's constantly popping up. His most famous miracle, right? He fed thousands of people using what? Barley loaves of bread and 2 fish. Jesus was, of course, Jewish. He celebrated Passover. We're told at a Passover meal, he shared unleavened bread with some of his closest friends. Jesus, we're told, even made breakfast for some friends on the shore of a lake up in northern Israel, and featured in his breakfast that he made was bread. However, the most significant connection between Jesus and bread isn't something he ate or something he prepared. It's something he said. What's really fascinating is one of Jesus' best friends, if not his very best friend, his name is John. John, as an old man, is spending some time reflecting on his time with Jesus. And he ends up writing kind of a little book and all about Jesus and his life and his time with Jesus. And John records Jesus describing himself 7 times using I am statements, kind of peculiar. Jesus said things like, I am the light of the world, or I am the good shepherd, or I am the way, the truth, and the life. Maybe you've heard that one before. But the very first I am statement that Jesus ever made had to do with bread. He said, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. Bread. Jesus said, listen, I'm kind of like bread for your soul. Now, hold on to that idea, bread of life. Jesus is the bread of life. Because I want to move on now to our next word, Bethlehem. Now, Bethlehem, if you've ever been to Israel, you go to Bethlehem. That's like a pretty common stop. Simple enough, right? However, what might surprise you is Bethlehem is actually not in Israel. It's actually in the Palestinian-controlled West Bank. And that's significant because it means to get there, you have to go through an Israeli military checkpoint. You drive through these huge concrete walls, plenty of armed Israeli soldiers. They search the little van you're in. They check your passports. It's very intimidating. But once you're on the other side of the walls and you're in Bethlehem, you discover a lovely little town of about 30,000 people, many of whom are Palestinian Christians. And Bethlehem is full of surprises. You can grab a cup of coffee at the local Stars and Bucks. There you go. I've been there, got a mug from there. It's amazing. If you're familiar with the famous street artist Banksy, he did some of his work in Bethlehem. This is on the Bethlehem side of that big concrete wall we just showed you. That's some Banksy art. Of course, you can visit the Church of the Nativity, which is built on the believed site of the birth of Jesus. And then, of course, in Bethlehem, there are plenty of souvenir shops, tourist shops, right? The city is packed full of them. And you can find all kinds of souvenirs, but the big souvenir that everybody gets in Bethlehem is a hand-carved nativity scene made of olive wood. Every souvenir shop has these. They're awesome. I grabbed one when I was in Bethlehem. I mean, they're just really, really cool. Now, on one particular trip to Bethlehem, I became very fast friends with the shop owner. And we were talking and just hitting it off and having a great time. And he tells me that he also owns a restaurant down the street. And I love food, and I thought, wow, that would be great. And he said to me, look, how about later tonight, I'm gonna send a driver back to your hotel in Jerusalem to pick you up, bring you back into Bethlehem. I'll close the restaurant. It'll just be me, you, and my family. We'll have great conversation and great food. And without even thinking, I'm like, yes, absolutely, I'm all over that. And then it dawned on me what I just said yes to. I said yes to have a stranger pick me up at night and drive me through a heavily armed military checkpoint with a Palestinian, no less, not an Israeli. And now I'm doing that all in the most politically, socially, culturally, religiously hostile environment on the planet. And I took pause for a moment, and then I said, yeah, I'm still definitely gonna go. I'm just not gonna tell my wife till after I'm back, is what and I'm so glad I went. I mean, it was amazing. It's one of the most memorable evenings of my life. I mean, we had such great conversation and great food. And I learned something about Bethlehem that night that completely reframed how I understand the Christmas story. That night, my friend told me that Bethlehem in Hebrew is actually a compound word. It's two words put together. And the first word is bet. And bet in Hebrew means house. And the second word is lechem. And lechem in Hebrew means bread. So quite literally, Bethlehem means the house of bread. So now think about this for a moment. We have the bread of life who's now being born in the house of bread. Like I said, what's Christmas all about? Bread, right? Bread, right? But then it gets really fascinating because 700 years before that first Christmas and Jesus is born, there was an ancient Hebrew prophet, his name was Micah, and he made this incredible prediction about Bethlehem, who at the time was not a small town of 30,000. It was an obscure little village of maybe 300. And Micah believed that this tiny, seemingly insignificant village, well known for its bread, was going to play a starring role in the arrival of God's long-awaited chosen one who would heal the world. And so Micah wrote this down. But you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah. Now, Ephrathah is just another word to describe the region around Bethlehem. And what's interesting about this word Ephrathah is it means abundant or a lot of. So Bethlehem isn't just the house of bread, it's the house of a lot of bread. Though you are small among the clans of Judah, you're insignificant. Out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. I mean, think about that. 700 years before it happened, God, through this guy Micah, pointed to this little village, Bethlehem, and said, that's the place. That's the place where my plan to rescue the whole world is going to begin. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. And it's a powerful reminder that nothing in the Christmas story is random, right? Every detail matters. And as we dig deeper into the story, we're always uncovering really fascinating concepts and really fascinating ideas. And like, oh my gosh, we're making all these connecting points. So let's look at our final word, manger. So we've got Jesus, bread of life, Bethlehem, the house of bread, and now a manger. Now, anytime we talk about the manger, we need to kind of bust a couple of myths around the Christmas story. Because I think a lot of times we hear manger and we think like little wooden cradle that we just filled with hay. And that's where like babies sleep. That's not where babies sleep. A manger in the time of Jesus was actually cut of stone, and it really was where you would put the food for your animals. And it was not uncommon, by the way, for those animals not to be stored in a field or a barn, but in your house. You would have like your lamb or your goat in the house, in like sort of the lower level sort of entrance of your house. And so that's why in your house would be a manger, would be this sort of trough cut of stone for your animals. And on the screens, what you see is is sort of a diagram of what a home could have looked like in Jesus' time in Bethlehem. And you see the lamb in the first floor, sort of that entryway to the house, right? That's kind of where the manger often was. And the most important thing we need to understand about a manger is it's not a place for sleeping, it's a place for eating. And that's significant because it means that the bread of life was born in the house of bread and placed in a place where you eat, right? A feeding trough. And this is important. This is all happening in a house, not a Motel 6, not an inn. Keep that in mind because I think it's been for way too long. We have just blasted away at a cranky motel manager who turned pregnant Mary away, right? But that's not what happened. The Bible doesn't ever even mention an inn or an innkeeper. We quite literally just made that up, right? In fact, a historian named Luke, an ancient historian named Luke, is the guy that actually recorded this moment. And here's what he wrote. Here's the actual words. She, Mary, wrapped him, Jesus, in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them, right? Not an inn, a guest room in a house. Mary and Joseph were not turned away by a grumpy innkeeper. Instead, they were very much welcomed by a family member who just didn't have extra space in the main living area. So they were given space in the home's lower level, an area often used for animals, and that's why Jesus is laid in the manger. That's what they had. It was right there. It's what they could make into a bed. And this is so important because it means the story isn't about rejection. They turned Jesus, pregnant Mary and Jesus away. How could they? They're gonna, burn in hell forever or whatever. It's not that at all. This is about making room where there wasn't much room to begin with. So if you've been tracking, here's the why. Why bread? Why was Jesus the bread of life and was born in the house of bread and, and placed in a place where you eat, in a feeding trough? Why? Well, to satisfy the hunger in every human heart. Listen, Christmas I love it all. I love the lights and the trees and the presents and Elf on the Shelf and Snoop on the stoop and the music. I love it all. But there's gotta be more than that. And at the end of the day, the authors that wrote down the story of Jesus said, if it helps you remember, Christmas is all about bread. It's about the bread of life being born in the house of bread, placed in a feeding trough to satisfy the hunger in your soul. Now, you may not be convinced of that. You may be convinced that you can fill any void in your life with something. But I think specifically from a Christian perspective, the answer is we can't actually fill every need and void in our lives. We need help. And our help, his name is Jesus. That love actually left heaven to come here to satisfy the hunger that existed in our heart and in our soul that no other person could fill, not even your special someone, that not enough money could fill, that not enough stuff could fill, that not enough success could fill. Only Jesus could fill. The bread of life was born in the house of bread, placed in a feeding trough to remind you, to give you an object lesson. And only he can satisfy the hunger of our hearts. Merry Christmas. Would you stand with me? And let's pray together. Jesus, thanks. Thank you so much for bread. I'm someone who needs those object lessons to remember. I need to know that The bread of life was born in the house of bread and placed in a feeding trough to satisfy the deepest hunger in my heart and in my soul. Thank you for Christmas. Jesus, we love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen.